My executive vice president's office was given to the newly arrived intern, Hudson, by my wife. Hudson posted photos of the office on social media, captioned, "Grateful for President Sanchez's trust and mentorship. I'll work hard and live up to these expectations." My assistant sent me a screenshot. In the photo, the entire layout of the office had been changed, and all my awards had vanished without a trace. I forwarded it directly to Jazmin. "What does this mean? Why is my private office being occupied by an intern?" Jazmin replied with a voice message, her tone tinged with drunkenness. "Darling, it's just an office. You don't need it right now anyway. Within 10 minutes, I want to see the office restored exactly as it was." Jazmin Sanchez didn't reply. 2 minutes later, the most important contract of the Sanchez Group was forced to a halt. If someone wanted to challenge authority, I didn't mind bankrupting the Sanchez company. Chapter 1. Jazmin's calls came crashing in one after another. I didn't press the answer button until the 5th call. A furious roar burst from the receiver. "Felix, are you insane? That project is worth $200 million. You know next week is the product launch. Stopping it now is basically destroying the company. All this for an office, was it really necessary?" In 5 years of marriage, this was the first time she'd ever lashed out at me for another man. I took a light sip of whiskey, feeling the liquid slide down my throat, a chill spreading through my chest. "It's not about the office, Jazmin. Restore the office immediately, including all my medals, not a single item out of place, or the company will suffer even greater losses." On the other end of the line, Jazmin fell silent for a few seconds. "Now, you have 5 minutes. I finished coldly and hung up. 2 minutes later, she sent photos of the restored office. Everything had returned to its original position. After receiving the photos, I immediately contacted the previous project manager and rescinded the suspension order. Then I sent Jazmin a photo. In it, everything in her study had been cleared out, including her favorite antique, the expensive piece she had just won at auction. Attached was another photo, showing antique fragments scattered all over the floor. "Jazmin, this is your punishment. You know my temper. There won't be a next time." There was no further response from her. I knew she was angry, but I was angrier. Our marriage began as a strategic alliance between two companies. 5 years ago, she needed the Vargas Group's overseas channels. I needed the Sanchez Group's domestic production base. A business marriage came together naturally. There was no passionate romance, only mutual benefit born of rational choice. "Felix Vargas, we won't just support each other in business. After marriage, I'll trust you and respect you as well." Before the wedding, Jazmin Sanchez held my hand, her gaze steady and sincere. "I appreciate Ms. Sanchez's honesty. I look forward to a pleasant partnership," I replied with a smile. In 5 years, we went from strangers to familiarity, from respect to reliance, and then to the budding of warmth and love. We shared countless nights leaning against each other after business banquets. This year, we finally had a baby, the best proof of our love, and the reason I believed our bond was unbreakable. But now, Hudson's appearance shattered all the understanding and trust we had built between us. Chapter 2. Jazmin didn't come home that night. I knew she was using this to express her anger and dissatisfaction. The next day, I removed the bandage from my leg and went straight to the company. When the group's employees saw me, surprise flashed across their eyes before they quickly lowered their heads to greet me. "Mr. Vargas, aren't you injured and still recovering? Why are you at the office today?" The young receptionist stepped forward and asked with concern. "There are some matters I need to handle personally." After giving a slight nod, I headed straight for the executive floor, but the moment the elevator doors opened, I heard laughter coming from Jazmin's office. Through the half-open door, I saw Hudson sitting beside her. There was a smile in Jazmin's eyes, completely different from the cold indifference she showed to other secretaries. In the past, aside from me, she never allowed anyone to sit in her office for long, let alone show such a gentle expression. Yet now, the distance between her and Hudson was so close there was almost no space between them, the two chatting happily. Hudson was wearing a high-end luxury suit. It was the exact style I had my eye on before, and the one Jazmin had mentioned she wanted to give me. Not only was the suit outrageously expensive, it was also a limited edition, with only 5 pieces worldwide. And now, it was on an intern. I pushed the door open. Their laughter came to an abrupt halt. The smile on Jazmin's face instantly froze. "Why are you here?" Hudson quickly stood up as well, putting on a respectful expression. In a gentle voice, he greeted me. "Vice President, hello. I heard you just had surgery and should be resting at home. Why did you suddenly come to the office?" I let out a cold laugh and shot back. "Who gave you permission to meddle in my affairs? Which blind idiot hired such a clueless piece of trash?" The smile on Hudson's face stiffened instantly. He opened his mouth, at a loss for words. "Take off the suit you're wearing now." The atmosphere in the office dropped to freezing point. Hudson's eyes widened, his lips trembling in disbelief. He looked at Jazmin, his eyes full of pleading. I turned to Jazmin as well, my gaze icy. Explain to me why my suit is on him. Jazmin frowned deeply, impatience evident in her voice. Because of yesterday's office incident, Hudson became the subject of quite a bit of gossip among colleagues. So I gave him some compensation. It's just a suit. I'll give you an even better one later. Compensation? I sneered. This suit may not mean much to us, but it's still a custom piece with only 5 in the world. Who does Hudson think he is to deserve wearing it? Besides, what happened yesterday was because he couldn't recognize his own position. He brought it on himself. Jazmin, have you also forgotten your own position? Forgotten who I am? Who gave you the right to casually give away something that belongs to me? After that string of words, Hudson turned deathly pale and stammered an explanation. I'm sorry, Vice President. I didn't know this suit was yours. Now that you know, take it off immediately. Seeing that I cut Hudson off and refused to relent, Jazmin grew anxious. Felix, don't take this too far. We still have a project to discuss. Stop making a scene here. My heart sank. She had never raised her voice at me in the office before. Now, she was breaking that rule for Hudson. Standing to the side, Hudson quietly let out a sigh of relief when he saw Jazmin standing up for him. A project? Which project? The cooperation with Group A. Hudson and I are about to head out. Jazmin tugged at her sleeve, her tone growing even more impatient. Hudson helped a lot with this matter, so I'm taking him along to the meeting. I raised an eyebrow and laughed mockingly. Oh, since when does an intern have that kind of capability, enough to influence the decisions of a listed company? Jazmin's face darkened. She picked up her bag and motioned for Hudson to follow. Let's go. Don't waste time. As they brushed past me, Hudson gave me a smug smile, his eyes filled with provocation. Jazmin, you brought this on yourself. Since you insist on backing Hudson, don't blame me for being ruthless. After they left, I took out my phone and dialed the private number of Group A's chairman. Chairman Law, this is Felix. About the cooperation Jazmin is planning to discuss today. Chapter 3. An hour later, I received a call from Jazmin. She was furious, her voice practically roaring. Felix, what exactly are you trying to do? Chairman Law openly humiliated Hudson, calling him a pretty boy, a man who climbed his way up by selling his body. He even said the entire Sanchez Group was built on your back, and that while you're recovering from your injury, I went looking for another man, ungrateful and shameless. This was all arranged by you, wasn't it? I let out a light laugh. Jazmin, I can't control what other people think or say, right or wrong. Everyone has eyes, they can judge for themselves. Hudson couldn't take the humiliation and left. The cooperation fell apart too. Are you satisfied now? Satisfied? I'm very satisfied. This is what you call reaping what you sow. After hanging up, the anger in my chest finally eased a little. Soon after, my assistant messaged me, saying Hudson's situation had already spread throughout the company. When he returned, colleagues pointed at him behind his back. Some even scolded him to his face, calling him arrogant, scheming, talentless, someone who climbed up using dirty tricks. Everything on his desk was thrown straight into the trash, even when he shouted hoarsely that he wasn't that kind of person, that they couldn't treat him this way. No one in the company listened to his defense. Who would offend a vice president for the sake of an intern? Everyone piled on, kicking him while he was down. I'd seen this kind of thing countless times. Hudson was simply suffering the consequences of his own actions. An intern with no background and no ability, thinking he could soar to the top just because of a bit of Jazmin's favor. What a joke. Humiliated and furious, Hudson submitted his resignation. Since he had never formally joined, HR took one look at it and approved it on the spot. Ending up like this was entirely his own fault. Who told him to overestimate himself and covet a position and a woman that were never his to begin with? After entertaining Group A and finally placating them, Jazmin returned to the company, only to find that Hudson had already left. Her face darkened completely. When she came home that night, I was coaxing our son to sleep. The little one's cheeks were soft and chubby, his nose and brows uncannily like Jazmin's. She stood at the nursery door. Though her expression was frighteningly dark, she deliberately lowered her voice. Hudson did nothing wrong. He was just a hard-working boy, and now, because of you, he's lost his job, and his reputation is ruined. Felix, even if you're throwing a rich young master's tantrum, there should be limits. I gestured for her to be quiet and gently laid the sleeping child down. Only after stepping out and closing the door did I speak. Jazmin, I'll say this one more time. Hudson being bullied and resigning were not ordered by me, even though I told myself it was nothing. The anger and distrust in Jazmin's eyes still made my heart tighten. Ask yourself, how many times did you break your own rules for Hudson? It was your tacit approval, your indulgence, that gave him improper thoughts. There's nothing between Hudson and me. Jazmin shot back emotionally. Nothing. Then why did you give him something that originally belonged to me? Why did you let him move into your office? Don't forget, your previous secretary wasn't even allowed to put an extra chair in your office to give a temporary report. And now, for Hudson, You've broken your rules again and again, so much so that you even turned on your own husband for his sake. I stepped closer, looking down at her, enunciating every word. Jazmin, I admit it, I like you. Otherwise, I wouldn't have married you, wouldn't have let you carry my child, but you also know me well. In my eyes, Felix Vargas has never tolerated even a grain of sand, let alone betrayal or deception. If you dare cross that line, even if it's only emotional drifting or ambiguity, I won't hesitate to give my son a different mother. Jazmin's face turned ashen. She turned and strode into the guest bedroom, and I knew this matter was, for all intents and purposes, over. After she calmed down in the guest room, we would reconcile the next day and turn the page. That had always been our unspoken understanding in maintaining this marriage for 5 years. The only difference was that previous conflicts had been about business or family matters. When it came to feelings between a man and a woman, this was the first time, and it would also be the last. Chapter 4. Early the next morning, Jazmin's phone rang. Hudson's name appeared on the screen. She hesitated for a moment, then still pressed answer. Hudson's voice came through the phone, choked with sobs. President Sanchez. I really don't know what to do anymore. Take it slowly. What happened? Jazmin frowned, her voice gentle. I'm being cyberbullied. My photos are everywhere online. Everyone is insulting me, saying I'm a pretty boy, that I climbed my way up by selling my body. I'm so scared. I don't even dare to go out now. Hudson's voice trembled with fear and helplessness, faint sobbing leaking through. Jazmin's expression turned extremely ugly when she looked at me. Flames burned in her eyes. Don't panic. Stay at home and don't move. I'll handle it right away. The fact that Hudson had offended me had long since spread within the circle, even without my instructions. Business partners eager to curry favor would naturally do things like this. I had already checked the online situation that morning. It wasn't nearly as serious as Hudson described on the phone, but I had to admit, his pitiful, fragile act successfully stirred Jazmin's protective instincts. The moment she hung up, Jazmin's anger exploded. She slammed her phone onto the table and glared at me with reddened eyes. Felix, what exactly are you trying to do? He's already left the company and stayed away from us. Why are you still targeting him? How did you become so vicious, hiding behind the title of chairman's husband, abusing your power and acting recklessly? I slammed my coffee cup down as well, showing no intention of indulging her. Jazmin, I've already said it. I didn't do anything. Everyone in the company knows he offended you. Other than you, who else would do something like this? Hey, Jazmin, in all these years, when have you ever seen me do something and not own up to it? Again and again, you question me for the sake of an intern. I think you've completely lost your head over him. With a darkened face, Jazmin stormed off. The door slammed shut with a heavy bang. I calmly wiped the corner of my mouth, watching her retreating figure, disappointment flashing through my eyes. That afternoon, I was scrolling through social media. I noticed that the overwhelming flood of negative news about Hudson had completely vanished, replaced by an official statement from the Sanchez Group. The statement claimed Hudson was highly capable and had entered the Sanchez Group through his own merit. The Sanchez Group would never tolerate malicious rumors targeting its employees, and would pursue legal responsibility for online misinformation. My phone lit up with a new message from my assistant, Mr. Vargas. President Sanchez not only had the legal department issue a statement, she also publicly announced that Hudson will return to the company effective immediately as her chief secretary. Anyone who spreads rumors or gossips will be fired on the spot. Now the entire company is speculating that President Sanchez and Hudson have an unusual relationship. My assistant's words made my chest tighten. Right after that, another screenshot came through. It was Hudson's post. The storms of the workplace have passed. True gold fears no fire. My efforts were not in vain. Thank you to President Sanchez for recognizing my abilities. From now on, I'll do my best to assist President Sanchez and will never betray this trust. Attached was a photo of an appointment letter. Hudson had been rehired as the president's chief secretary of the Sanchez Group, with a salary on par with a vice president. Staring at that nauseating post, I slammed my phone onto the table, killing intent surging in my eyes. Not long after, Jazmin came home to grab some documents. Not sparing me a single glance, she went straight upstairs, took what she needed from the study, and was about to leave. I tapped my fingers lightly on the coffee table and spoke to stop her. Jazmin, what is the meaning of this? She stopped, turned to me with cold eyes. Hudson is just a diligent employee, yet for no reason he was targeted by you, driven out of the company, and subjected to cyberbullying. I'm simply compensating for the mistakes you made. This is what Hudson deserves. And what if I insist that you fire him? Then try it. Before, it was out of respect for my husband that I tolerated you again and again, allowed you to abuse your authority and hurt others. But I've had enough of your behavior. This time, I won't sacrifice Hudson, and I won't let you do whatever you want anymore. Jazmin turned and left. The sound of the door echoed through the entire villa. At that moment, I was completely disappointed in her. A 5-year marriage built on understanding and companionship had developed such a rift because of a man who had appeared only half a month ago. I sat on the sofa, anger and disappointment intertwining in my chest. The glass in my hand shattered under my grip. Blood flowed down my palm as I forced myself to calm down. Since she was determined to stand on Hudson's side, then she couldn't blame me for being ruthless. Jazmin, you will definitely pay the price for what you did today. Chapter 5. After making my decision, I picked up my phone and directly dialed my private lawyer. Oscar, I need you to prepare a divorce agreement immediately. Make sure the asset division is crystal clear. Not a single cent can be missing. On the other end of the line, Oscar was stunned by my sudden decision and cautiously confirmed. Mr. Vargas, are you serious? Divorce is not a trivial matter. Immediately, right now. I want to see the agreement within 3 days. Understood. Then regarding Ms. Sanchez, no need to notify her. This is my decision. After hanging up, I turned on my computer and pulled up all business records involving the Sanchez Group. Over 5 years of marriage, I had given the Sanchez Group far too many conveniences and resources, and now, it was time to take all of them back. Next, I issued a direct order to the Vargas overseas headquarters. Inform all partners to suspend all cooperation projects with the Sanchez Group. The reason will be technical adjustments. Yes, Mr. Vargas. The response was crisp and decisive, no questions asked. Absolute obedience to my command. That had always been the Vargas family's way of doing things. Then there were the core technical teams Vargas had invested into the Sanchez Group. I instructed HR to bring all of them back to Vargas with double the salary. This series of actions caught my father's attention. His call came quickly. The moment I answered, I got straight to the point. Dad, I've decided to divorce Jazmin. After a brief silence, my father's voice came through. Have you thought it through? Very clearly. All right, I won't ask for the reasons. Your mother and I trust you and support your decision. Since you've decided, don't hesitate. The Vargas family never drags things out. Within 2 days, I quietly withdrew everything. Funds in my private accounts were transferred one by one, ensuring Jazmin could no longer access them, and she knew nothing about any of it. Over those 2 days, Hudson's social media accounts were extremely active as well, posting daily photos of accompanying Jazmin to business events. A new car, a new watch, a new office. The captions were always some variation of "Thanks to President Sanchez for her cultivation." I glanced at it once on the first day and then blocked him. Trash like that wasn't worth a second look. After that, I devoted all my energy to preparing the new company. Suddenly, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Jazmin. Felix, my father's birthday is today. He wants us to go back to the old house. If you don't want to go, I'll go by myself. Her voice was cold and distant. I glanced at the divorce agreement already prepared on the desk and curled my lips slightly. I'll go. It was time to lay everything out and put an end to it all. Chapter 6. At 7 in the evening, I drove my Maybach slowly through the gates of the Sanchez family's old estate. The courtyard was brightly lit, and faint laughter and conversation could be heard. Mr. Sanchez, his wife, and several relatives were standing at the entrance to welcome the guests. When they saw me step out of the car alone, a trace of surprise flashed across their faces. Felix, where's Jazmin? Mr. Sanchez asked. It was no wonder they were surprised. In 5 years of marriage, this was the first time the two of us had not appeared together. She said she'd arrive later. They warmly ushered me inside. The butler personally brought me a cup of Longjing tea. I sat on the sofa, took the teacup, and calmly took a sip. Half an hour later, the front door was pushed open again. Jazmin finally arrived. What no one expected was that Hudson was walking in right behind her. Mr. Sanchez immediately sensed something was wrong. His face darkened, anger flashing in his eyes. Jazmin, today is a family dinner. Why did you bring an outsider? Dad, Hudson is my chief secretary. We just finished handling company business, so I brought him along. This is a family dinner. How can you mix it up with company affairs? Mr. Sanchez raised his voice. Send him back. Hudson's expression changed. He looked at Jazmin with a wronged, pitiful expression. That move was clearly effective on Jazmin. She immediately spoke up in his defense. Dad, Hudson is my most capable assistant. He's been busy all day and hasn't even eaten. Just let him stay. Seeing his daughter so muddle-headed, Mr. Sanchez grew even angrier. Felix is busy too. Has he ever brought his assistant to a family dinner? This is a family gathering, not a business social. Butler, see the guest out. With Mr. Sanchez's order, the room fell into an awkward silence. The butler hesitated, caught between the conflicting parties, unsure how to act. Hudson stood behind Jazmin, yet his eyes kept darting toward me, a faint, provocative smile playing at the corner of his lips. This farce completely exhausted my patience. No need. I cut in coldly, pulling a document from the inner pocket of my suit and laying it out in front of everyone. This is what I came here for today. When they saw the large words divorce agreement on the cover, The entire room fell into dead silence. Jazmin's face turned deathly pale. The handbag in her hand slipped to the floor with a dull thud. Her voice trembled as she questioned me. Felix, you want a divorce? Have you lost your mind? My gaze shifted from Jazmin to Hudson, then back to her. I'm very clear-headed, clearer than ever. Mr. and Mrs. Sanchez hurried forward, trying to mediate. Felix, if there's any misunderstanding, we can talk it out slowly. You can't act on impulse over something like this. There's nothing more to say. I've already made my decision. I won't sign it. Jazmin suddenly screamed, her eyes reddening. Just because I made Hudson my chief secretary, you want to divorce me? Jazmin, you know perfectly well what this is really about. I stared straight into her eyes, enunciating every word. I warned you, and I gave you chances. Felix, never give anyone a second chance. I already broke my own rule for you, yet you still pushed your luck. Since you chose a pretty boy over stepping all over my head, don't blame me for being ruthless. An uproar broke out in the room. Jazmin stubbornly refused to sign. Her mother grabbed my arm, her voice pleading. Felix, calm down. Let's discuss this properly. Please don't be impulsive. I freed myself politely but firmly. Madam, I've already made up my mind. There's no room for negotiation. Jazmin, you can refuse to sign, then we'll settle this in court. With that, I turned and strode away, leaving behind a banquet plunged into chaos. Chapter 7. I stood in front of the floor-to-ceiling window, overlooking the entire city, feeling lighter than I had in a long time. My assistant walked into the office, holding the latest report. Mr. Vargas, today another 30 core employees from the Sanchez Group submitted applications to join us. His tone carried barely concealed excitement. So far, we've successfully poached 100 of Sanchez's key technical personnel. Sanchez Group stock hit the down limit as soon as the market opened today. This is the 5th consecutive trading day it's been locked at the limit. In addition, multiple major projects have been forced to suspend due to talent loss. There are already rumors in the market that Sanchez Group is on the verge of bankruptcy. I nodded slightly. Everything was unfolding exactly as I had anticipated. Without the support of the Vargas Group, without its core technical teams, the Sanchez Group was nothing more than a fish out of water, struggling uselessly as it waited to die. Oh, and there's another interesting piece of news. The assistant added, unable to suppress a grin. Apparently Hudson made a big show of himself at a Sanchez Group executive meeting, proposing that the company pivot into the tech sector. The project collapsed almost as soon as it launched. Now the entire Sanchez Group is in total chaos. I let out a cold laugh. A liberal arts graduate daring to lecture a technical team, he really doesn't know his own limits. The outcome was entirely predictable. Hudson was nothing more than a flashy shell, no real skills, no business acumen to speak of. Only because Jazmin had lost her head would she hand critical company decisions to someone like him. The phone on my desk lit up again, another call from Jazmin Sanchez. It was already the 15th missed call of the day. I directly added her to the blacklist. I had no interest in hearing her explanations or apologies, and even less interest in knowing how she was doing now. I heard that after Sanchez Group stock kept plunging and multiple projects ground to a halt, she finally came to her senses and fired Hudson. But it was too late. The Sanchez Group had already been severely weakened, with nearly half its market value evaporated. That afternoon, security called. Mr. Vargas, MS. Jazmin is in the lobby, requesting to see you. Not seeing her. She says she won't leave unless she sees you. The guard said awkwardly, then let her stand there. Have someone keep an eye on her and make sure she doesn't cause trouble. I hung up and continued focusing on the work in front of me. Did she still not understand? Everything was already over. That evening, my assistant messaged me to say Jazmin had stood outside the company entrance for 2 hours before finally being escorted away by security. The next day, the security call came again. This time, the visitor was Mr. Sanchez. After a moment's thought, I nodded and had my assistant show him in. After all, over the years, Mr. and Mrs. Sanchez had treated me fairly well. Mr. Sanchez's eyes were bloodshot, his whole demeanor noticeably haggard. The moment he entered, he went straight to the point. Felix, I know Jazmin made a mistake, but she's realized it now. Could you give her one more chance? His voice carried a plea, his eyes filled with hope. Uncle Sanchez, I respect you, but this matter is beyond saving. I know Jazmin was wrong, but she truly understands now. Please, for the sake of your marriage. I cut him off. Uncle Sanchez, you understand as well. Some mistakes, once made, leave no road back. She's already fired Hudson. She regrets it deeply now. Firing Hudson doesn't solve the problem. Jazmin didn't just disrespect me, she betrayed the feelings we shared. I don't tolerate even a grain of sand in my eyes. There's no possibility left between us. If she still refuses to sign the divorce agreement, I'll continue suppressing the Sanchez Group until it completely collapses. Mr. Sanchez's face turned grim. I understand. I'll persuade her to sign. I'll raise the child. The Sanchez family is welcome to visit at any time. Though I felt a twinge of pity for the elder, I had no intention of compromising my principles, nor did I want any further entanglement with Jazmin Sanchez. Mr. Sanchez let out a heavy sigh, nodded, and walked toward the door with a hunched back. 3 days later, the signed divorce agreement was delivered to my desk. Chapter 8. Night fell. After finishing the last document, I prepared to leave the company. As I stepped out of the building, a disheveled figure crashed into my line of sight. Hudson was pinned between 2 security guards, clothes rumpled, hair a mess. The moment he saw me, he struggled even harder, nearly breaking free of their grip. Felix, this is all you're doing. You destroyed my career. You ruined everything. I kept a safe distance and looked down at him coldly. Hudson, you seem to have one thing wrong. You were fired because you're incompetent. Those so-called strategies of yours were nothing but second-hand trash copied off the internet, full of holes. Hudson's face flushed, then turned pale, the rage in his eyes flaring even brighter under my words. I continued. The only reason you became the Sanchez Group's chief secretary was because you exploited Jazmin's sympathy, playing the victim to gain her protection. You're nothing but a talentless pretty boy who climbed up by flattering women. That's your true nature. At the company, you bullied those below you and deceived those above, stealing, taking, extorting. No one dared say a word because you hid behind Jazmin, using her trust and protection, didn't you? Do you really think you amount to anything in my eyes? You're just a useless pretty boy, a male prostitute who climbed up by selling pity and flesh. Trash like you isn't even worth calling garbage. Hudson's face went deathly white. I had clearly struck a nerve. He suddenly burst free from the guards and lunged at me. Shut up, I'll kill you. I didn't move an inch. The instant he was about to reach me, the guards slammed him to the ground. I walked up and stepped on his hand. Hudson, if you ever dare appear in front of me again, I'll make sure you die a miserable death. Killing you would be easier than crushing an ant. You'd better pray I never lay eyes on you again. Hudson completely broke down, screaming hysterically. Felix, you'll die horribly. I'll kill you. The guards immediately covered his mouth and dragged him away. That very night, an anonymous account leaked sordid photos of Hudson from his time working at a private club. In the pictures, he wore a sycophantic smile, drinking and entertaining several elderly wealthy women. Soon after, surveillance footage of him stealing merchandise, along with chat logs from his college days showing him scamming his girlfriend out of money, were all exposed. I hadn't instructed anyone to do this, but there were simply too many people eager to curry favor with me. Those desperate to gain the Vargas Group's approval took it upon themselves. Jazmin's father, Mr. Sanchez, used his influence to blacklist Hudson throughout the industry, leaving him nowhere to stand. In the end, Hudson could only return to the same club where he had started, resuming his old line of work. It was said that less than a month later, he fell seriously ill from overexertion and died. As for me, within half a year after the divorce, I signed 3 major contracts in succession. The company's stock price doubled, and my career soared. Business Weekly even named me the most influential entrepreneur of the year. With Mr. Sanchez's help, Jazmin began restructuring the Sanchez Group, embarking on a long and arduous road to recovery. She would occasionally appear in business news, the sharp edge in her eyes dulled, replaced by a trace of weariness and age. Chapter 9. 3 years passed in the blink of an eye. My company had become a leader in the industry, and my image as a wealthy, single CEO made me the object of admiration for countless women. But my heart remained devoted to my career and to my son, Ian. I never gave any serious thought to romance again. Ian was already 4 years old, bright, energetic, and when he smiled, he looked very much like me. After the divorce, I reserved most of my time for him, personally picking him up from and dropping him off at kindergarten every day. In my office, I even set aside a small corner filled with Ian's toys and drawings, so he could come by any time. Daddy, when is Mommy coming to see me? Ian suddenly looked up at me, his eyes full of anticipation. I glanced at the calendar on my phone. The day after tomorrow is your birthday. Mommy should bring you a present then. According to the divorce agreement, Jazmin was allowed to visit our son twice a month, no more than 3 hours each time. In 3 years, she had never missed a single visit. No matter how busy she was, she always appeared at the agreed time and place. She brought carefully prepared gifts and did everything she could to make up for what she owed him, despite the resentment I still held toward Jazmin. For the sake of Ian's healthy growth, I never interfered with his contact with her. Over these 3 years, under Jazmin's efforts, the Sanchez Group gradually regained its footing. Though it was no longer what it once had been, it was operating steadily. We occasionally crossed paths at business events, exchanging a simple nod, nothing more. On Ian's 4th birthday, I held a small party at home, inviting his little friends and the nanny. That afternoon, the doorbell rang. I opened the door and saw Jazmin standing outside, holding a huge gift-wrapped box, a birthday present. I took the gift and nodded. I'll be back in 3 hours. Right on time. Jazmin nodded as well, watching me leave with unmistakable reluctance in her eyes. Over the past 3 years, she had hinted more than once, through various means, that she wanted to reconcile. At business occasions, she would deliberately bring up the good times we once shared. After visiting Ian, she would linger a little longer, trying to find topics to extend our conversations. She even had mutual friends pass along messages, saying she still loved me and was willing to start over. But all of those attempts were rejected by me, in one way or another. Some things, once broken, can never be restored. My current life, success in my career, a healthy and happy son, days full and meaningful, was far better than the marriage I once had. Compared to the past, I now lived with greater freedom and far more peace.